Start our Sunday class of Ishavasya Upanishad and with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Om Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitra Varenayam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat Asto Ma Satgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Amritam Gamya Om Sehna Bhavatu Sehna Bhunaktu Sehviryam Karva Vahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvisha Vahi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Ishavasya Upanishad. We started a few weeks ago and we ended our last week class with verse number 5. Where this Rishi is saying the Atma moves and it moves not. It is far and it is near. It is within all this and it is also outside all this. This is like an Upanishadic language. If you just take it literally, a lot of contradiction seems like, but if we dig deep into it, only then you understand the implication of these verses. So that's why we are going rather slowly in understanding this Upanishad. Okay? So any questions so far? If not, let's start with verse number 6 today. Yatu sarvani bhutani atmani evanupashyati sarvabhuteshu cha atmanam tataha na vijupsate. Ya means who. Tu means however or but. Sarvani, all. Bhutani, beings. Atmani, in the self. Ev means alone. Anupashyati, constantly sees. Sarvabhuteshu, in all beings. Cha means and. Atmanam, self. Tataha, then. Na means not. We jugupsate, feel hatred, aversion. He who constantly sees everywhere all existence in the self and the self in all beings and forms. Therefore, feels no hatred for anything. Okay? Tataha na vijukste. See, Atma, we know, very hard to explain and very difficult to understand. So why should we pay any attention to understanding the Atma? Why do we need to strive for it? Or strive to contact it? Or realize it? Benefit of that is given over here. Why should we make effort? Why should we move towards this reality? Because the benefit which gets accrued to that individual is this. All pervading reality everywhere, inside, outside. This is what a person will cognize around and about. So that's why the state of perfect tranquility, that's what it is actually. Perfect. So that state of tranquility is gained by this kind of a yogi or a seer who has realized this. That's why this verse is often repeated In other scriptures also, in Bhagavad Gita also we read this. So it's often repeated. So that's why for a seeker, a serious seeker, it is worthwhile to do the sadhana. Constantly remember this verse with all its implications and all its import in the mind. So this is almost like an antidote for all the inner poisons of the mental agitations and intellectual unrest. Otherwise, there's a constant churning going on because we are looking for this kind of a tranquility. So he says, if you can see this, if you can realize your own self, and this self, this oneness with all the self, Sarva Bhutani. Because this life, it is one unbroken center. It's everywhere, it's homogeneous. This life center everywhere. There's no place it's not. So a person who has fully and completely experienced this life principle, the self within him and the self without is all pervading. This is the person who has the true wisdom, eternal, immortal, and the true wisdom. So it's like a person has realized the core of all the beings, not just a core of himself, core of all the beings. That's why he said, Yatu sarvani bhutani, all. That's why this kind of a person, we call him a sage, a prophet, or a God man, a true leader of the people who has the guiding power in the universe. So this kind of a person is completely divorced from the regular ideas which we people normally feel. Repulsion towards this, dislike towards this, fear from that person or that place, hatred, all these perverted feelings a person doesn't have. Because all these negative feelings, they arise from this sense of division and polarity. From the other, I don't like that because that's other. So for this person, it's only one. So that's why this word jugupsaha, it's a very powerful word, jugupsaha. Okay, so no jugupsaha, no hatred, no dislike. It's just like an unbroken state of tranquility. That is opposite of jugupsaha. And Lord Krishna used the word samatva to explain the same kind of a feeling, samatva. He said repulsion and attraction removed. What do we have as samatva? Okay, so it's the same, different terminology, but the same idea. More we gain the inward tranquility, the samatva, what happens? More joyous and effective our lives become. So enemy of this tranquility is our own jugupsaha. So we got to learn how to eradicate this jugupsaha from our mental constitution. So this is the seeking we need to do. This is the sadhana we need to do. So repulsion, hatred, shrinking, dislike, fear, they can always come inside our mind because of the feeling of another. The intellectual eye may dislike or fear or hate the mental eye at a given time and place. Because there is a pluralistic concept. Otherwise, there is no need to do that. There is no need to entertain this thought of jugupsa. So when we are established more and more in ourselves, the experiencing of the other goes away. So only a feeling of oneness. So the feeling of other has retracted. And that's when the perversion of jugupsa has diminished. So in the next verse, he is explaining more vividly some more truth to us. He says, Yasmin sarvani bhutani atma ev abhut vijanata tatra ka moha ka shokaha ek tvam anupashyata. Yasmin, in whom? So that kind of a yogi, sarvani, all, bhutani, beings, atma, self, ev, alone, abhut, have become, vijanata, knowing. Tatra means there, ka means what? Moh, delusion. Ka shoka, what grief? Ektvam, oneness. Anupashyata, while constantly seeing. I always tell you, anu word means a smallest of the smallest part or the portion. A small anupashyata, so constantly. Okay. When to the knower, all beings have become one. In his own self, how shall he feel deluded thereafter? So the feeling of oneness. No two, just one. We are all one. So when to the knower all beings have become one in his own self, how shall he feel deluded thereafter? No more. What grief can there be to him who sees everywhere oneness? So a person who has realized his oneness with the entire universe can no longer have the ordinary tossing of the mind. Ordinary tossing of the mind is what? Tension, stress, fear. And this is all created through moha and shok, delusion and grief. These are the two terms this Rishi is using over here. Grief is the language of the delusion. Grief. The amount of grief in an individual's life is directly proportional to the amount of delusion in him. So they are directly related. Higher the delusion, more the grief. Because in the essential nature, in the Atma, the inherent nature, we are all bliss, nothing but bliss. And delusion means you really do not have much understanding of who you are. That is a delusion. So you have moved so much away from the reality, and outcome of that is what? Grief. Not knowing yourself, the reality. You have superimposed something else on you, and that's where the grief comes. So this delusion creates grief. More the delusion, more is the grief. Just remember that, this formula. Because we normally want to get rid of the grief with something which is temporary. Because we really don't have a perfect formula in our mind. This Rishi is giving us a perfect formula. If you want to get out of grief, get out of the delusion first. So moh and shok. So to get away from grief is the goal of life actually. That is sought by every living creature. Nobody wants to stay in grief. Mild term for grief is sadness. Nobody wants to be sad. Nobody wants to be unhappy. A little bug or even any animal, a bird, human being, fish, nobody wants. Okay? So, but as a human being, we have been given this higher level of intellect to use that to get rid of delusion. Because where the knower experiences in his own self the entire universe to be one, which is nothing but his own real nature, there's no grief. It's almost like a part space. Inside the part space can discard all its sense of limitations, imperfections, and sorrows only when it rediscovers itself to be nothing but the universal space. So that means the part can be broken, but the space is nothing but the outer universal space. So the same way, what is our part? This physical body, which is called a sathul sharir, then a subtle body, the suksham sharir, the causal body, the karan sharir, those are all the layers on us. And we think we are this, we are only this. So when we understand who we are really, only then the delusion has removed. Otherwise, we keep on going from the birth, growth, decay, death, and associated sorrows with them, the griefs with them, pains with them. And that's when we keep ourselves separate from the universe, that universal life. So that's why this Rishi is telling us where there's no delusion, there's no grief. So grief is the expression of delusion. So write it down. Lord Krishna said, even the heaviest sorrow cannot shake a yogi, even a wee bit. Okay? Heaviest sorrows. Because a yogi knows the reality. Okay? But if we are deluded, even a minor pain and ache, we just lose our tranquility. The next verse, it's a little longer verse over here, a lot of little terms over there. These terms are basically adjectives, and through these adjectives, this is a language of the Vedas. And there is a particular significance how these words have been put in there. So I'm going to explain this verse word by word to you. What do they really mean? Sa paryagat shukram akayam avranam asnaha virgam shuddham apap vidham kavi manishi paribhu swambhu yatha tathyatah arthan vyadgat shashwati bhya samabhya. Sa means he the Atma. Pragyat, all pervading. Shukram, bright. Akayam, bodiless. Avranam, without wound. Asnavirgam, without muscles. Shuddham, pure. Apapvidham, unpierced by evil. Kavi means wise. Manishi, omniscient. Paribhu, transcendent, Swambhu, self-existing, Yatha Tathyataha, respectively. Arthan, functions, Vidghat, allotted, Shashvitibhya, eternal, Samabhya, for years to come. He, the Atma, is all pervading, bright, bodiless, without wound like a scatheless, without muscles, pure, unpierced by evils, wise, omniscient, transcendent, and self existing. He alone allotted their respective functions like duties to the various eternal years. Eternal years means the creators. Pretty deep significance of this verse. So in the very order in which these qualifications are grouped is very important too. So it's like a technique used by the rishis. Let's look at the very first word, prayagat. That means gone abroad or went around. So this verse opens up with an idea that self went out to spread itself everywhere. So that's why I said it's all pervading. It spreads everywhere, the Atma. So it means a self is all pervading. It extends beyond all limitations. See, body has the limitation, mind and intellect has the limitation. Atma does not have the limitation. It can spread anywhere. And we can see this, realize this only first if we know this. That's why this knowledge is important. Even theoretical knowledge is important. Then next expression is shukram. Self to be the bright in the sense that it is very light giving principle in our intelligence. Okay, so it is bright because that's how we envision God is all light. So this Atma, all light, bright. Akayam, bodiless. So self is indicated here that it is bodiless. It meaning that it has no connection with the matter. Like this matter, this all these elements, five great sheaths also. It is not a prisoner in the body. It's not a prisoner. We think it's a prisoner and we make this our reality. Otherwise, Atma is not a prisoner in this body. It is ever free, ever bright. This is the one which gives the brightness to the highest part of our personality, the intelligence also. So, Akayam. And the next one is Avarnam. And like without wound and without muscles. So it has no physical body. A wound can be only in a physical body. It doesn't have a physical body. Because where there's no body, no disease can come here. Wound really means a disease. There's no disease to the Atma. And then Shuddham, pure, Atma has no causal body. Sometimes we just think that Atma has the vasanas. No. Vasanas are not part of the Atma. Vasanas are where? In the Cheta, which is part of the matter. Subtle part, but not part of the Atma. So it is untouched by sin. What is the greatest sin in us? Yesterday also we learned in our Yog Darshan class, the greatest sin is that ignorance of your own nature. That is the greatest sin, avidya. Because this avidya is the one, this ignorance about our real nature, it just creates all the animal passions in us. We become more and more subhuman because we don't know our real nature. Because self is immaculate. Apapavidham. The last term in the first line, apapavidham. Self is immaculate. There is no sin in there. It's ever pure, and that's what we are. So this whole group of these words, they indicate to us that the Atma is neither the physical, nor the subtle, nor the causal body. That is the point he's trying to make very clear to us. And transcending all this, transcending the physical, mental, and causal, the self is eternal and perfect. That's what he's telling us in the next line. So in the first line, he says what the Atma is not. And the second line, in some of the words over there, he's telling us what Atma is. Because we really don't know anything other than physical, subtle, causal. So sometimes we misunderstand. We think that Atma is just a complex of negative ideas with no positive qualities to explain it. So to assert that it is a positive factor with all the dynamic qualities of life, the series of terms are used here in the second line. First he says the self is the seer, Kavi. That means that Atma in us, the life spark in us, is the real vitality beyond the eyes that sees or the ears which hear, the nose that smells, the tongue that tastes, or skin that feels. So if the life principle is removed from the sense organs, they in themselves are what? Impotent. No power in them. They cannot register any impressions of their objects. So to experience the world of objects, we need not only the sense organs, but we also need that vital force behind it. Otherwise, these cannot function, no matter how beautiful our eyes are, or how perfect our mouth is. If that vital force is gone, nothing comes out. So self or the Atma is the seer in all the organs, mind and the intellect, and omniscient. So if this Atma is the knowing principle in the individual, and it is the same in all the individuals, all the living beings. That's why it said it is the one knowing principle in all. In me, the Atma knows. In you, the Atma knows. That Atma is the same. They are not two Atmas. That's why Atma is considered an omniscient, all-knowing Manishi, and it's certainly transcendent. Atma is a state of unexperienceable experience. Why? Because it lies beyond the realm of the finite. Only finite we can experience. Infinite we really cannot experience. Then he uses the term, positive term, self-existing, Swambhu. As finite creatures, as human beings, we struggle, we strive to understand the reality behind the world of perceived polarity. Only through the intervention of our instruments of thinking and feeling. So intellect can function only through definite fields of activity, which is called time, space, and causality. That's why if we meet somebody, Mr. X, then we like to know from where, whose son that is, or whose father that is. We need to know where did it come from. So Atma, where did this come from? Because this quest is in us also. Where did we come from? This is called a causation hunting intellect. We want to know the cause. So over here, this Rishi said the ultimate cause is itself, Swambhu. There was no cause, uncaused by any other cause than itself. There was no cause for it. That's why we were not created. Atma is beginningless, it's endless. There's no point in time when we were born as Atma. So philosophically, we have to accept this. Swambhu. So the idea is expressed here when the self is discussed as Swambhu, meaning self-sprung, self-created. It's not born out of something, but it is self-born. Okay? So self is the first cause which is untouched by any effect that is not in itself the effect of any cause. That's how the philosophers or the yogis, they explain it. Because all the effects are perishable. Because they are born. The self is imperishable. And so it must be unborn. So you can call it a self-born or uncaused cause. We have to just look at this whole universe. The movements of the planets, the regularity of the seasons, the harmony in nature, the rhythm also in reproduction, which is strictly followed without exception all around the globe, because we really don't know much outside of the globe yet. Even on the globe, what is happening right now with the COVID? Yesterday we were discussing, there were a couple of doctors over here. Yeah, don't know. Don't know what is happening all around the globe. But it has been happening, this creation over here on this globe, millions of years now. It is because of the unquestionable authority behind the law giver and his law. And his means the God. That's all we can call him. The name also is given by us. But it is authority, might, or power belongs to the supreme reality, the self. and we are all that. So let me go back to this verse. He says, he, the Atma, is all pervading. So whether you want to call it Atma, or you can just switch this word to Paramatma also if you want. But there's no difference in the Atma and Paramatma. Okay. So he, the Atma, is all pervading, bright, bodiless, scatheless, without muscles, pure, unpierced by evils, wise, omniscient, transcendent, and self-existing. He alone allotted their respective functions to the various eternal creators. So all these devatas which we call the elemental forces, who gave them the power to create, to function, whether we call them Varun Devta, or whether we call Agni Devta, or Prithvi Devta, or Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, who gave the power to them? Well, Almighty Self, one. And we are that. So we got to take our understanding to that level. Okay. Let me do one more verse, then we'll have some discussion. Number 9. I told you when we first started that number 4 to 8, the Rishi explained what exactly is the goal of life. So this is the goal of life, to know ourselves. 4 to 8. And now the next portion is verse number 9 to 14. Over here, this Rishi is indicating to us that knowledge and action are to be taken together. Because in the beginning, he said some people take action as the primary thing. The others, they meditate because they have evolved to that level where they can meditate. Over here, he is telling us that knowledge and action, meditation and worship are to be taken together. Okay. So let's look at it. So these verses are all the way up to 14, this theme. So if you look at just one verse, sometimes you get confused. So it's like the whole wave of thought is in these 5 verses. Okay. So we'll start with the 9, and then next week we'll finish this whole thought wave. It's like a thought wave. That's how this scripture is going through. अंधम तमा प्रविशन्ति ये अविद्याम उपासते ततः भूया इव ते तमा य उ विद्यायाम रता. Andham, blinding. Tama, darkness. Pravishanti, enters. Ye means who? Avidyam, upasate. Upasate means worship. Okay. So avidya, ignorance, or opposite of knowledge. Tataha, then that, bhuya, greater. Iv means as though, te means they, tamaha, darkness, ya means who, u means verily, vidyayam, in vidya, knowledge, rataha, devoted, engaged in. They who worship avidya alone enter into blinding darkness. And they who are engaged in vidya very fall as though into an even greater darkness. So again, if you take it literally, it's very hard to understand. We got to open this up. What does it really mean? First, avidya is rights. rituals. Okay. And Vidya is meditation. Because I told you that he is talking about the karam and the meditation in this wave. So over here, he's taking our minds. He's making us think that what does it really mean? This Upanishad is an answer to the eternal doubt, actually, as to whether a life of action or a life of meditation is the ideal way of living. Arjun had that confusion too. Should I do the action or should I just go and meditate? What is the right way of doing? Knowledge versus action has been the eternal problem with every generation of thinkers. Thinkers. Otherwise, people don't even pay much attention. But when you start thinking, you wonder. When you observe your life closely, we want to know the theme of this life. We want to investigate. And that's what this investigation is done in these 5 verses. So in this verse over here, the Rishi has opened up this problem for us and he is summarizing actually later on in the following 3 verses, which we'll see next week. So the term used by the Rishi in defining this problem of outward activity versus inward contemplation are avidya and vidya. You will see in other scriptures or later on in this scripture also, upasana and karam. Those are also, upasana word is used for vidya and karam used for avidya. So don't get confused with these terms. Try to understand why these terms are used here. In a general sense of the term, those who are keeping themselves engaged exclusively in a field of ritualistic activities, which is also called as sakam bhakti. You are doing the rituals to get something out of it. So you are staying connected with this world. You just want something, some worldly desires to be fulfilled. So he says that's a darkness. Because Sakam Bhakti is undertaken only when the individual is whipped by desires for the fruits thereof. I want to do this so that this I earn. So he calls it tama. Andham tama. Blinding darkness. We don't know by asking for it where I'm going. So when the ritualistic portion of the Vedas are performed with a desire for living the joys of greater sensuousness, when it's not done from the standpoint of the spirituality, that I want to know God. So you are falling into the blinding darkness. I mean, you can see that verses like this, the average person doesn't want to listen to this. They say, we go to God, we want things. It's like a barter system over there. But then he says in the second line, the path of meditation is even a greater hell, darkness. They who are engaged in meditation very fall as though in an even greater darkness. The key word over here is as though. As though. And we'll talk about it next week, what this as though means. Because in these, the scriptures of this depth, each and every word is very important. Sure, our ordinary mind goes towards the darkness only. But we got to look at why did he add if word over there as though? There's a reason for it. So we'll discuss it next week. So we'll start with this verse because this thought is between 9 and 14, verses number 9 and 14. So together we'll study it. So if I explain it to you right now, uh, then you'll say, yeah, I have understood it, but no, I want you to understand it completely. Okay, so let's stop it here, and let me do the Shanti mantra, then you can ask the questions, and then after that I'll request Manny to sing the bhajan. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much. So any question?
Neetu?
Hershey,
Yes, yes, Neetu.
my question is, when you know in the field of action, you know you are in duality, you are a little awake, you're a little asleep, and you're always, ego is always driving or controlling you to act according to his will. And yet I am always falling in that trap and not able to do the godly act. And then when I go in silent and write my introspect, I realize it was again my actions were driven by the ego. And how do I make the conscious choice before the ego's control, or have a self control or willpower to override that egocentric acts? That's what my question was.
Okay. First of all, if we simplify our life, it's easier to control. A person who is just a very fast paced life, too much to do, too many things, too many entanglements, sure, not enough time to think it through. Why I'm doing it? So simplification and then regularity in a life. And at our stage, especially, only one thing at a time. While eating, eat only. Okay? So just remember God and Guru more often.
I see.
God and Guru. When we remember that, that's where we get the power. We know that there's something higher than us. When we understand there is somebody higher than us, then ego subsides. It's almost like when a mother is present in the room, the child behaves. Right? Presence of the mother. So if we always feel the presence of God and the Guru with us, ego will not take over. Okay, so these are some of the things, and as we go along, you will learn more techniques also.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Julie.
Sujata, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. You know something, Hershey, after listening to this, it almost seems like both Vidya and Avidya are sort of propagating themselves, right? I mean, independent of the Atma. And
Yeah.
it seems like an endless process.
No, it's not endless. There is a definitely, you'll see that towards the end of this wave, there will be more clarity.
Okay.
Okay, right now it's just a start of it.
Okay.
Don't draw any conclusion yet. Okay.
Thank you. Thank
That's what my
you. Advice. I trust you. You're my guru. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pramila?
Okay.
Pramila?
Namaste, Hershi.
Yes, Pramila.
This is regarding your question. You explained Atma and it's beginningless and endless.
Mm-hmm.
And you said to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand all that. But could you explain a little bit more about it? Talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, what you need to do is just with this knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
because we are endless. Because whenever some worry come, fear come in our mind, just remember this. I am infinite, part of infinite. I'm all pure. There's no blemish in the Atma. So identify with that and get rid of the grief and the delusion. Okay, so that's why he is giving us this verse over here. Who you are is so much bigger. And you have deluded yourself that you are only this much. And that's why you are worried. Okay, so this is an assurance he is giving it to us. We have not realized it yet, but this knowledge itself helps us keep on doing our practice. Okay, otherwise we keep on worrying and creating more karmas, me and mine, I'm bigger, I'm higher, I'm lower. No, he says, no, we are all one. And we are infinite. Okay, so these
Yeah,
are
I keep on reminding myself.
yeah,
I
keep on
mean,
reminding, that's all we can do. That's why we are studying this. Keep on reminding, keep on doing what you need to do. That doesn't mean you just sit passively. No, keep on doing your duty, but remind yourself who you are. Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, yes, Jyoti.